Hello, I'm Catherine Biarahanga. Let's start with the latest business news with Sally. And Sally, once again, tariffs dominating the headlines.
They are, and they will probably for the next few weeks. So our focus is on the United States, where President Trump, in the latest of a series of new letters to trading partners, has threatened a 50% tariff on Brazil. It's an escalation of his fight with the South American country, which he criticised earlier this week, along with other BRICS-aligned countries, for standing against US interests. In this latest letter, he accused Brazil of attacks on US tech companies and conducting a witch hunt against former right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro, who's facing prosecution accused of trying to overturn the outcome of the 2022 election. Trump has posted 22 letters to countries around the world this week outlining new tariffs on their goods. He says they'll come into force on the 1st of August. For more on the latest batch, here's our North America business correspondent, Erin Delmore.
It's been 2 days since President Trump first shared screenshots of letters to 14 nations' leaders via his social media platform, Truth Social. Now there are more, each one saying that a country's exports to the U.S. are going to be subject to steep new tariffs starting on the 1st of August. But a line in the letters shows they may be less of an edict and more of a negotiating tactic. They say the U.S. will perhaps consider changing the tariff rates, quote, depending on our relationship with your country. President Trump has said that he's imposing tariffs on foreign imports in order to ramp up production and manufacturing in the U.S. But tariffs are a tax on imports paid by the firm or person importing the goods for sale here in the U.S. Sellers often pass these increased costs on to consumers. The research group Yale Budget Lab estimates that the U.S. consumer is facing, on average, a 17% consumption tax from the tariffs, the highest in 9 decades. Mostly, the rates in the letters look close to what President Trump unveiled during his April 2nd Liberation Day tariff announcement. Massive market turmoil followed that time, but this week, not so much. The S&P rebounded after 2 days of losses, buoyed by tech giant NVIDIA reaching a market cap of $4 trillion. Other AI-driven tech stocks rose on that news as well.
Erin Delmore there, or Hosuk Lee Makiyama, who you can see behind me here, is a Brussels-based economist, trade lawyer and foreign policy commentator. I asked him about the European Union, which has yet to receive a letter as far as we understand. He told me what he's hearing about a possible deal between the EU and the US.
The EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen had a call with Donald Trump early June. It seems like a relatively smooth sailing. The message seems to have been, and it seems to be a very successful message, by the way, that the EU could either pay the new tariffs or it could increase the defense spending. And as far as for the US interest goes, it was pretty clear that it's more in the interest of the United States to accept the increased defense spending. And we seem to plateau towards temporary deal around 10% against the increased defense spending that has now been announced at the NATO summits 2 weeks ago. So it seems like we have some minor outstanding issues, especially on the increased sectoral tariffs that we mentioned, and they happen to go against primarily European export interest. But it seems like we have a deal within a few days.
Okay. And just quickly, Hosuk, it's hard to keep up with all the letters that have gone out this week, each country getting its own number in terms of potential tariffs on August the 1st, 50% for Brazil. What's your take on all of this and the impact it's going to have on the US and the global economy?
Well, the 50% seems to be the magic number that Donald Trump uses to threaten countries from which he expects a little bit more. And it probably signals engagement rather than anything else. Bear in mind that the European Union was faced with, well, not so much a letter, but a tweet saying that we could be facing 50% tariffs. And that's when we devised this defense spending against lower tariff regime that we have now engaged on. And when it comes to Brazil, it's actually quite an odd story because the United States seems to be running a trade surplus against Brazil. And it is also a partner in many areas. But as we heard in the previous segment, Brazil is a member of BRICS, and BRICS countries have issued a very controversial statement with regards to the attack on Iran by US and Israel. And this is, of course, a very, very sensitive issue.
Economist Hosuk Lee Makiyama there.